The execution chamber aboard the Dominion flagship was built to humiliate entire civilizations. Black metallic walls towered over the kneeling prisoners while billions across the Empire watched through live transmissions projected onto planetary skies. The aliens loved spectacle. They loved fear. And above all, they loved proving that humanity had finally been broken. Captain Elias Varen knelt at the center of the chamber with blood running from one side of his face, chains wrapped around his wrists, and the cold barrel of an ion rifle pressed against the back of his neck. Around him, hundreds of captured soldiers remained forced to their knees beneath the silver banners of the Dominion. Some stared at the floor in silence. Others glared upward with exhausted hatred. But none begged. That alone irritated the Dominion commanders. Supreme Executor Kale moved slowly across the platform, his towering armored form reflected in the polished black floor beneath him. His species had ruled thousands of systems for over 8 centuries. Entire races collapsed at the mere arrival of Dominion fleets. But humanity had resisted longer than anyone predicted, and that resistance had become deeply personal. "You still do not understand your place," Kale announced, his amplified voice echoing across the massive chamber. "Your worlds burn. Your fleets are ash. Your species stands on the edge of extinction. And yet you continue pretending you are equals." A massive hologram ignited behind him, displaying Earth surrounded by Dominion warships. Entire continents glowed red from orbital bombardments. Smoke covered oceans. Cities that once housed millions had become scars of fire visible from orbit. Billions watched in silence across the galaxy. The Dominion wanted them to witness humanity's end. Kale stopped directly in front of Elias and lowered himself slightly until both stood eye to eye. "You fascinate us, human," he said quietly. "Every logical outcome predicted your surrender months ago. Every survival instinct should compel submission. Yet your people continue fighting battles already lost." Elias slowly lifted his head despite the rifle pressing harder against his skull. "That's because you still don't understand us." Kale narrowed his glowing eyes. Elias smiled through the blood on his lips. "Humans are dangerous when we're losing." A murmur spread through the prisoners. Even now, chained and starving, the words ignited something inside them. Kale stood motionless for several seconds before laughing softly. "Dangerous?" he repeated. "Your homeworld collapses while you kneel in chains." "You think this is the end?" Elias whispered. Kale leaned closer. And that was when every light aboard the flagship suddenly died. Darkness consumed the chamber instantly. The live broadcast across the Empire dissolved into static. For one strange moment, silence swallowed everything. Then the stars outside vanished. Confused voices erupted among the Dominion guards as emergency systems struggled to reactivate. The massive viewport behind the execution platform no longer showed the battle above Earth. It showed nothing. No stars. No planets. No light. Just an endless black ocean stretching infinitely in all directions. Fear spread rapidly through the chamber. Dominion officers barked orders while technicians desperately attempted to restore systems, but every command returned corrupted. Entire control networks began collapsing one after another as though something enormous had reached into the flagship itself. Then the whisper came. Almost impossible to hear. But every living being inside the chamber heard it clearly. "We found you." Several guards staggered backward instantly. One dropped his weapon. Kale turned sharply toward the darkness beyond the viewport, his confidence finally cracking for the first time. "What was that?" one officer whispered. Nobody answered. The black void outside moved. Not like space. Like liquid. Massive shapes shifted beneath the darkness as if entire worlds were swimming beneath an ocean of shadow. Slowly, enormous silver lights began opening across the abyss. Eyes. Thousands of them. Watching. The chamber temperature dropped violently. Frost spread across the metal floor while alarms finally screamed back to life throughout the flagship. "Unknown vessels detected," someone shouted. "No, not vessels. Life forms approaching." Panic erupted. The black ocean outside split apart as colossal structures emerged from the darkness itself. They resembled ships only loosely. Their surfaces twisted like living metal wrapped around skeletal frameworks large enough to dwarf entire fleets. Silver energy pulsed through them like blood through veins. And every single one carried the same symbol burned into its hull. A human hand surrounded by stars. Elias stared upward in stunned silence. He had seen that symbol before. Not in war briefings. Not in military archives. In nightmares. The flagship shook violently. One of the massive entities moved closer to Earth orbit, and suddenly every Dominion warship simply stopped moving. Their engines died simultaneously. Weapons shut down. Entire fleets drifted helplessly through space while invisible pressure crushed their systems from within. Kale's breathing became uneven. "That symbol," he muttered. An ancient fear entered his eyes. Elias noticed immediately. "You know them." Kale didn't answer. The viewport brightened suddenly as one of the colossal beings fully revealed itself beyond the darkness. It was impossibly huge, larger than cities, its body composed of fractured silver light wrapped in shadows that bent reality around them. Countless eyes opened and closed across its surface while distant whispers echoed from nowhere. And at its center, a face. Human. Or something that used to be human long ago. Every prisoner stared in frozen silence. The being looked directly at the execution chamber, then directly at Elias, and smiled. Dominion soldiers began backing away instinctively. One officer collapsed screaming as blood poured from his eyes. Another fired wildly at nothing before being dragged into darkness spreading across the walls themselves. The creature spoke next. Not through speakers. Inside their minds. "We remember Earth." The words hit Elias like a physical force. Memories exploded through his head that did not belong to him. Burning galaxies. Human armies marching across alien worlds. Stars weaponized into engines of war. And towering silver beings leading humanity across the cosmos like gods. He staggered as visions flooded him faster. Humanity ruling the stars. Humanity feared. Humanity becoming something ancient and terrible. Then the vision stopped. Elias collapsed to one knee gasping for air. Around him, Dominion soldiers looked far worse. Some screamed uncontrollably. Others tore off helmets while begging in their own language for mercy. Kale stood perfectly still. Terrified. Kale whispered toward the entity. "You were erased." The silver being tilted its head slowly. "We were forgotten." Outside the flagship, the black ocean spread across Earth's orbit like an incoming tide. Entire Dominion fleets vanished inside it without explosions or debris. One moment they existed. The next they were simply gone. Every broadcast channel across the galaxy activated simultaneously. The silver-eyed being appeared on trillions of screens at once. And every civilization heard the same sentence. "The children of Earth are under our protection once again." Across the galaxy, entire governments froze as the transmissions spread through every known communication network simultaneously. Military frequencies, civilian broadcasts, encrypted royal channels, even isolated deep space relays hidden inside forbidden sectors all displayed the same impossible image. The silver-eyed entity staring silently into billions of homes as Dominion fleets disappeared into the growing darkness around Earth. Panic erupted almost instantly. The Dominion Senate ordered emergency mobilization across all surviving systems. Ancient defense platforms dormant for centuries were reactivated. Entire armadas launched from hidden fortresses buried beneath moons and dead planets. Species that once feared even speaking against the Dominions suddenly watched their rulers trembling openly for the first time in recorded history. Because they recognized the symbol. A human hand surrounded by stars. Some civilizations had ancient names for it. The First Flame. The Starborn Empire. The Devourers of Heaven. But every translation meant the same thing. Humanity before history. Inside the shattered execution chamber aboard the Dominion flagship, Captain Elias Varen struggled to steady his breathing while chaos consumed the vessel around him. The massive silver being outside Earth remained motionless, yet reality itself distorted around its presence. Entire sections of the flagship were collapsing without physical damage, as though the laws holding matter together had begun failing. Dominion guards no longer cared about prisoners. Fear had erased discipline. Some soldiers ran blindly toward escape corridors. Others dropped to their knees praying in ancient dialects Elias could not understand. One officer repeatedly screamed the same sentence while clawing at his own armor. They came back. They came back. Cale stood near the viewport in silence, staring into the black ocean surrounding Earth. Elias slowly rose to his feet despite the chains still hanging from his wrists. "You know what they are," he said. Cale did not turn around. "When I was a child," the Dominion commander whispered, "our scholars taught us the oldest lie in the galaxy." Outside, another Dominion cruiser vanished soundlessly into darkness. Cale continued staring forward. "They told us monsters once ruled the stars. Creatures born from humanity itself. We were taught those stories were myths designed to frighten young civilizations into obedience." The flagship trembled violently again. But the oldest races knew better. Elias stepped closer. "Tell me." For several seconds Cale remained silent. Then slowly, reluctantly he spoke. "Millions of years ago, long before modern civilizations existed, humanity ruled a galactic empire beyond comprehension. They mastered gravity, time, genetic evolution, even dimensional engineering. Entire species worshipped them as gods." Elias felt cold dread spreading through his chest. "What happened?" Cale finally looked at him. And for the first time since his capture, Elias saw genuine terror inside the alien commander's eyes. They discovered something beyond reality. The chamber lights flickered again. Silver shadows moved briefly across the walls. Cale lowered his voice instinctively. The ancient records claim humanity pierced another dimension searching for immortality. They called it the Veil. At first it gave them knowledge, power, evolution beyond biological limits. He swallowed hard. But eventually the Veil changed them. Images flashed suddenly across the broken hologram systems surrounding the chamber. Ancient human cities stretching across entire planets. Silver-eyed beings standing above kneeling alien civilizations. Stars collapsing into massive gateways. And endless war. "The Empire split in two," Cale continued. "One side wanted to abandon the Veil. The other embraced it completely." Elias already knew the answer. The ones outside won. Cale's silence confirmed it. A deep vibration rolled through the ship as something massive passed nearby in orbit. The viewport darkened briefly beneath an impossible shadow larger than continents. Then the silver being outside Earth moved, slowly raising one enormous hand toward the stars. Every surviving Dominion vessel in orbit froze instantly and began tearing apart, not exploding, unraveling. Metal peeled away into glowing fragments while ships folded inward like paper crushed by invisible forces. Thousands of warships disintegrated simultaneously without firing a single shot. The execution chamber erupted in horror. One prisoner whispered, "My God!" But Elias could not look away from the entity, because despite its monstrous scale, part of him recognized it. Some instinct buried deep within human blood responded to the creature like ancient memory awakening after millions of years asleep. The silver being suddenly turned its countless eyes directly toward the flagship. Toward him. Then a voice entered Elias's mind alone. "You carry the bloodline." Pain exploded through his skull. He collapsed instantly as visions flooded his consciousness. He saw ancient Earth beneath unfamiliar stars. Towering silver structures rising into space. Human children with glowing eyes laughing beside beings made from living light. Then war. Entire galaxies burning. Human fleets firing weapons capable of ripping open reality itself. And at the center of everything stood a throne surrounded by darkness, occupied by a human figure crowned in silver fire. The figure slowly lifted its head, and Elias saw his own face. He gasped violently as the vision shattered. Back inside the chamber, Cale stared at him in alarm. "What did you see?" Elias could barely breathe. Before he could answer, every screen aboard the flagship activated again. Another transmission. But this time the silver entity was no longer alone. Thousands of colossal figures now floated behind it within the black ocean surrounding Earth. Some resembled twisted humanoids. Others looked like living machines fused with stars themselves. Their mere presence distorted nearby space into impossible shapes. The lead entity spoke calmly. The Dominion will surrender the Sol system immediately. Its voice echoed across the galaxy. You will withdraw from all human territories. More silver eyes opened across the darkness. You will never touch Earth again. The Dominion Senate responded within minutes. Not with surrender. With war. Hidden weapons platforms across 12 systems activated simultaneously, launching ancient stellar warheads towards Sol at faster-than-light speeds. Entire fleets emerged from hyperspace around Earth by the tens of thousands. The galaxy held its breath. Even Kale looked relieved. No empire survives the full Dominion arsenal, he whispered. Elias wasn't so sure anymore. The warheads entered Sol system. And vanished. Not intercepted. Not destroyed. Erased. The silver beings did not even move. Then came the retaliation. One of the colossal entities slowly opened its hand toward the stars. Far across Dominion territory, a sun disappeared. Just vanished from existence. Billions died instantly as entire planetary systems froze in darkness. Shockwaves spread through galactic communication channels. Emergency broadcasts erupted everywhere. Fleets halted mid-deployment. Civilizations once loyal to the Dominion began severing alliances in panic. Because for the first time in recorded history, the Dominion was afraid. And Earth had become the center of something far older and more terrifying than any empire in existence. Earth no longer looked like a world trapped in war. It looked like the center of an awakening. The black ocean surrounding the planet continued expanding through the Sol system, swallowing debris, broken warships, and entire Dominion fleets into its silent depths. Yet strangely, nothing human was harmed by it. The darkness moved around Earth's surviving cities like an invisible shield, sparing refugee convoys and damaged civilian stations while annihilating anything carrying Dominion signatures. Nobody understood how. Nobody understood why. But for the first time since the invasion began, humanity was no longer losing. Deep beneath the ruins of Geneva, Secretary General Naomi Reyes stood inside the emergency command bunker surrounded by frightened officers and exhausted scientists while screens displayed impossible readings from orbit. Every sensor on Earth contradicted known physics. Space itself around the planet had become unstable, folding inward and outward like breathing lungs. And at the center of it all floated the silver entities. Watching. Waiting. They're not attacking us. One scientist whispered nervously. Another looked pale. That doesn't mean they're here to save us. Reyes said nothing, because she had seen the classified Horizon Gate recordings. She knew humanity opened something ancient, something connected to them, and now it had come home. Suddenly every monitor inside the bunker flickered simultaneously. A single line of text appeared across the screens. Prepare the descendant. Confused voices spread across the chamber. What does that mean? Who's the descendant? Then another transmission arrived directly from Earth orbit. Visual only. The silver-eyed entity appeared once more, but this time the massive being lowered its head slightly, almost like a bow. And behind it stood Elias Varen. Alive. The command chamber erupted instantly. How is he there? He was aboard the Dominion flagship. Reyes stepped closer to the screen in disbelief. Elias looked shaken beyond words. Blood stained his uniform, and silver light faintly pulsed beneath the skin near his eyes. Behind him, the massive black ocean moved endlessly around the broken remains of Dominion fleets drifting through Sol. Then Elias spoke. They're not invaders. The bunker fell silent. They say humanity belonged to them once. Several officers exchanged terrified looks. Reyes leaned toward the transmission. Captain, what are those things? Elias hesitated. His voice lowered. I think they're what humanity became. Silence crushed the room again. Before anyone could respond, the feed distorted violently as alarms suddenly screamed across every system in the bunker. One officer turned white. Multiple hyperspace ruptures detected. Another shouted over him. Dominion reinforcements entering the Sol perimeter. The tactical display exploded with red signals. Thousands. Millions. Entire Dominion battle groups emerged from hyperspace around the outer edge of the solar system, stretching farther than sensors could fully track. Planet-killer dreadnoughts, carrier moons, stellar siege engines, ancient war constructs humanity had never even known existed all poured into Sol simultaneously. The Dominion had committed everything. A final extermination. Even the scientists stared in horror at the scale of it. They brought the Imperial core fleets, someone whispered. Another officer looked sick. That's impossible. Those fleets guard the Dominion capital. Reyes understood immediately. The Dominion wasn't trying to win anymore. They were trying to survive. Outside Earth, the silver entities remained perfectly motionless as the greatest armada in galactic history surrounded the system. Then a new transmission appeared. Dominion High Chancellor Varos himself materialized across every screen in the galaxy. Ancient, armored, and visibly terrified beneath forced composure, the ruler of the Dominion stared directly toward Earth. To the entities beyond the veil, he announced carefully, the Dominion offers full withdrawal from human territories. Hostilities can end here. Behind him, Dominion fleets continued positioning weapons. The silver-eyed being answered calmly. You still believe this is negotiation? Varos' expression darkened. You destroyed entire systems. You enslaved our descendants. The temperature inside the Geneva bunker suddenly dropped. Silver static crawled across every monitor. The entity's countless eyes slowly opened wider. You burned Earth. Across the galaxy, entire communication networks began failing again. Stars visibly distorted near Sol. Reality itself was bending. Varos realized it too late. Fire all weapons, he ordered instantly. The Dominion unleashed hell. Millions of warships opened fire simultaneously. Planet-killer beams crossed the void like rivers of light. Stellar warheads ignited across the solar system. Entire sections of space vanished beneath bombardment powerful enough to sterilize galaxies. Humanity watched in absolute terror. Then the attacks stopped. Not because the Dominion ceased firing. Because the weapons no longer existed. Every missile, every energy beam, every warhead, frozen motionless in space. The entire battlefield became silent. The silver entity slowly raised one hand and crushed reality. The stars themselves bent inward across the battlefield as invisible force collapsed through the Dominion armada. Warships folded like paper. Massive dreadnoughts twisted into spirals of molten metal. Entire fleets imploded soundlessly as gravitational distortions ripped through hyperspace corridors faster than commanders could react. Billions died within seconds. But the true horror came afterward. The dead began speaking. Across every surviving Dominion ship, voices echoed through communication systems using the tones of lost soldiers, forgotten commanders, and ancient rulers long dead. We remember. We remember. We remember. Panic spread instantly through the armada. Some ships turned weapons on themselves. Others fled blindly into unstable hyperspace tiers. Entire formations collapsed into chaos while the silver beings advanced slowly through the destruction like gods walking across an ocean of ash. Inside the Dominion capital world far beyond Sol, emergency sirens screamed endlessly as senators attempted evacuation. Ancient archives were opened for the first time in centuries. Forbidden histories once erased from public knowledge flooded across secured military networks. And every classified document confirmed the same terrifying truth. Humanity was never an insignificant young species. Humanity had once ruled the galaxy. And the things now surrounding Earth were the survivors of the empire that reality itself tried to erase. Back aboard the shattered Dominion flagship, Elias fell to one knee as another violent vision tore through his mind. This time he saw the end. Ancient human worlds burning beneath silver skies. Civil war consuming galaxies. The veil opening wider and wider until entire star systems disappeared into darkness. And at the center of the catastrophe stood the first Veil King, the ruler who transformed humanity into something beyond mortal comprehension. The king turned slowly toward Elias. Silver fire burned inside his eyes. "You are the final heir." Elias staggered backward in horror. "No." But deep inside himself, something ancient had already begun waking up. The dream began with fire falling upward. Elias stood alone beneath a silver sky while entire stars drifted like dying embers above an endless black ocean. Massive structures floated across the horizon, impossible towers made from fractured light and dark metal stretching beyond the clouds themselves. Millions of voices whispered through the air around him in languages both alien and strangely familiar. And somewhere far away, something enormous was breathing. He looked down at his hands. Silver light moved beneath his skin like living veins. "No," he whispered. But the world around him reacted instantly. Mountains in the distance bent inward. The ocean trembled. Reality itself responded to his fear. A voice emerged behind him. "You resist the inheritance." Elias turned sharply. The silver-eyed king stood only a few feet away now. Up close, the ancient being looked less monstrous than before. He wore dark armor etched with glowing symbols that shifted constantly across its surface. His face looked completely human except for the eyes, endless silver galaxies burning where pupils should have been. Yet the worst part was familiarity. The king looked exactly like an older version of Elias himself. "You're not real," Elias said. "I am memory." The king slowly walked beside him toward the edge of the black ocean. "Humanity was never born weak," he continued calmly. "Your species once crossed galaxies before most civilizations discovered fire. You shaped stars, built worlds, tore open dimensions." His voice darkened. "And eventually we reached beyond creation itself." The ocean beneath them suddenly moved. Massive shapes rose beneath the surface, larger than planets. Watching, Elias stepped backward instinctively. "What are those things?" "Our evolution." The king raised one hand toward the horizon. The sky split open instantly. Visions flooded across the heavens like living history. Elias saw ancient humanity discovering the veil, a dimension beyond conventional existence where thought could shape matter itself. At first it was celebrated as salvation. Disease vanished. Mortality faded. Human minds expanded beyond biological limits. Then came transformation. The veil changed humanity slowly. Thought became power. Emotion became energy. Reality bent around human will. And with every generation, humanity became less mortal, less physical, less sane. Elias watched civilizations kneel before silver-eyed rulers capable of extinguishing suns with a gesture. Entire galaxies became provinces beneath the First Empire. Alien races worshipped humanity as gods while countless worlds burned resisting them. Then came the Civil War. One side demanded humanity abandon the veil before it consumed them entirely. The other embraced ascension. The war shattered existence. Entire sectors of reality collapsed. Time fractured. Stars vanished. Billions of worlds were erased from history itself. And finally, facing extinction, the remaining civilizations united against humanity. Together they imprisoned the veil-born empire beyond dimensional barriers. They buried Earth, erased human history, and rebuilt civilization over humanity's grave. The visions ended violently. Elias dropped to his knees, breathing hard. "That's impossible." The king stared silently toward the distant black horizon. "Your species has spent millions of years asleep, Elias." His voice lowered. "But blood remembers." Suddenly the sky darkened. Far away, a massive crack spread across the heavens. The king turned sharply. "They found us." The dream shattered instantly. Elias woke violently aboard the Dominion flagship with alarms screaming across every corridor. Emergency red lights flashed overhead while the vessel shook from distant impacts. Outside the shattered viewport, Sol System had become a battlefield beyond imagination. The Dominion's surviving fleets were retreating. Not strategically. Desperately. Silver entities moved through space like living disasters while entire armadas collapsed around them. Planet-sized war constructs exploded soundlessly beneath gravitational distortions, tearing reality apart. But something new had entered the system. Something worse. At the edge of Sol, space itself was cracking open. Not hyperspace. Not dimensional travel. Something deeper. The black ocean surrounding Earth suddenly recoiled violently for the first time. Fear spread through the silver entities. Elias felt it immediately. Whatever was arriving terrified even them. Kale staggered onto the bridge beside him, pale with shock. "What is happening?" Elias demanded. The Dominion commander stared at the growing fracture in horror. "They came." "Who came?" Kale's voice nearly broke. "The hunters." The crack across space widened further. Darkness poured from it like blood from a wound. Then the first ship emerged. It looked ancient beyond comprehension. Massive black armor covered its surface, scarred by wars older than galaxies. Glowing red symbols burned across its hull while chains kilometers long dragged behind it through the void. And unlike the silver entities, this thing radiated absolute hatred. More ships followed behind it. Thousands. An endless armada emerging from beyond reality itself. Every vessel carried the same symbol. A broken human crown. The silver-eyed beings around Earth retreated immediately. Not fleeing. Preparing. Elias felt cold dread spreading through him. The king's words echoed inside his skull. "They found us." A transmission burst across every frequency in Sol. The new fleet spoke with one unified voice. "We have located surviving Veilborn." The temperature aboard the flagship dropped instantly. The voice continued. "Final extermination begins now." Even the silver entities went silent. Then one of them answered coldly. "You should have remained buried." The hunter fleet opened fire. Reality exploded. Entire sections of space shattered apart as weapons unlike anything humanity had ever imagined ripped through the battlefield. Silver entities screamed for the first time as massive black lances pierced their forms, tearing fragments of darkness and light into the void. One colossal Veilborn creature collapsed directly into Jupiter's orbit, its dying body distorting gravity across the entire planet. The war had changed instantly. This was no longer humanity against the Dominion. This was an ancient war returning from extinction. And Earth stood directly between both sides. The first moon died 37 minutes after the hunters arrived. Europa shattered without warning as one of the black warships turned its massive red eye toward Jupiter's orbit. No explosion followed. No visible weapon. The moon simply folded inward like collapsing paper before disappearing into a sphere of compressed light smaller than a city. Then the light vanished too. Humanity watched billions of tons of matter erased in silence. Panic spread across Earth faster than governments could contain it. Emergency shelters overflowed. Religious broadcasts flooded global networks. Some called the silver entities humanity's saviors. Others called them demons. Entire populations began rioting as the sky itself cracked above the planet with expanding dimensional fractures. And through all of it, the ancient war continued. The hunter fleet moved with terrifying precision. Unlike the Veilborn entities, they did not distort reality wildly or unleash chaotic destruction. Their attacks were surgical, focused, purposeful, built for extermination. Massive black lances pierced silver creatures across the battlefield while strange red symbols burned through the darkness surrounding Earth. One by one, the colossal Veilborn beings began retreating deeper into the black ocean as the hunters advanced relentlessly through Sol. But something felt wrong. Elias sensed it before anyone else. The hunters were not trying to destroy Earth. They were trying to reach him. A violent pulse suddenly exploded inside his skull. Visions returned instantly. He saw ancient soldiers wearing black armor standing beneath collapsing stars. Human faces stared from behind their helmets. Entire armies marched against silver-eyed empires while galaxies burned around them. The hunters were human too. Or at least they once had been. Elias staggered through the damaged flagship corridors as another wave of memories slammed into him. The Civil War. The split. The final betrayal. One side embraced the veil completely. The other dedicated itself to destroying it forever. And now both had returned. Alarms screamed across the ship. Unidentified boarding signatures detected. Kale spun toward the tactical displays in horror. They're inside the flagship. The walls suddenly shook from distant explosions. Dominion soldiers opened fire down nearby corridors as shadows moved through smoke and sparks. But these were not silver entities phasing through reality. These were soldiers. Black armored figures advanced through the ship with terrifying efficiency, their weapons cutting through Dominion forces like paper. Every movement looked cold, mechanical, precise. Elias caught his first clear glimpse as one emerged from the smoke ahead. The figure stood over 7 feet tall beneath dark metallic armor covered in glowing red markings. Its helmet resembled a skull forged from obsidian steel. And through the visor, human eyes stared back at him. The soldier immediately stopped moving. For one long moment, both simply stared at each other. Then the hunter slowly lowered its weapon. Genetic confirmation complete, a distorted voice announced from behind the helmet. Primary bloodline located. Kale raised his rifle instantly. "What are you?" The soldier ignored him completely. Its gaze remained locked on Elias. "You are the final descendant of the first throne." Elias felt the words like ice through his veins. "No." The hunter stepped closer. "The Veil-born corrupted humanity millions of years ago. They turned our species into gods drunk on power." Its voice darkened. "We ended them." Outside the viewport behind them, another silver entity died beneath concentrated fire from the hunter fleet. But some survived. The soldier pointed toward Earth. "They found the bloodline." Elias shook his head violently. "I'm not part of this." "You already are." Suddenly the silver-eyed king's voice exploded inside Elias's mind again. "Do not trust them." Pain ripped through his skull as silver light burst briefly beneath his skin. The hunter instantly raised its weapon again. Containment risk increasing. More hunters entered the corridor behind it now, weapons aimed directly at Elias. Kale stepped between them instinctively. "You're not taking him." The lead hunter tilted its head slightly. "This galaxy died once because humanity touched the veil." Its weapon hummed louder. "We will not allow a second extinction." The corridor lights suddenly exploded. Darkness swallowed everything. Then silver eyes opened everywhere. The Veil-born had arrived. Black shadows erupted through the walls themselves as massive distorted limbs tore into the corridor. Dominion soldiers vanished screaming into living darkness while silver energy flooded across the ship like rising water. The hunters fired instantly. Reality detonated around them. Red energy beams ripped through the silver shadows while gravitational distortions twisted entire sections of the flagship apart. Elias was thrown violently against the wall as both factions collided around him with enough force to split the ship in half. And at the center of the chaos, something inside him awakened. The silver light beneath his skin spread rapidly up his arms and across his chest. The air around him began bending unnaturally. Loose debris floated upward. Electronic systems failed instantly near him. Both the hunters and the Veil-born suddenly stopped fighting. Every eye turned toward Elias. Fear crossed the hunter leader's face for the first time. "No," it whispered. The silver-eyed king emerged slowly from the darkness nearby, his massive form partially phasing through reality itself. "He remembers." Elias dropped to his knees screaming as ancient memories flooded into him completely. He remembered the throne, the empire, the veil, and the war that destroyed heaven itself. Millions of years ago, before humanity's fall, he had another name. The last Veil King. The scream that tore from Elias's throat did not sound human anymore. The entire flagship shook violently as silver energy exploded outward from his body in a massive shockwave, ripping through walls, corridors, and armored decks like paper. Dominion soldiers were thrown across the chamber while hunter warriors slammed backward into collapsing metal structures. Outside the shattered vessel, nearby warships lost power instantly. Reality itself bent around Elias. He saw everything. Not fragments. Not visions. Memory. He remembered standing upon a throne carved from collapsed stars while entire civilizations bowed beneath humanity's banners. He remembered leading fleets through galaxies no longer existing. He remembered opening the veil for the first time and hearing the universe scream as humanity crossed a boundary never meant to be touched. And worst of all, he remembered becoming addicted to the power beyond reality. The silver-eyed king stepped forward slowly through the collapsing corridor while darkness curled around his body like living smoke. "You sealed your memories before the fall," the king said softly. "You buried yourself within the bloodline so humanity could survive." Elias stared at him in horror. "No. You were our ruler." The words shattered what remained of his certainty. More memories flooded into him uncontrollably. He saw himself commanding the Veil-born empire at the height of its power. Entire galaxies bent beneath his will. Black holes chained into weapons. Time manipulated like machinery. Humanity evolving into immortal entities capable of rewriting existence itself. Then came the war. The hunters. The betrayal. Elias remembered the moment humanity split apart forever. One side believed the veil would eventually consume all creation. The other refused to surrender godhood after ascending beyond mortality. So humanity turned against itself. The war destroyed reality across millions of worlds. And Elias caused most of it. The hunter commander rose slowly from the wreckage nearby, damaged armor sparking violently. "You see now," the soldier growled. "You are the reason civilizations feared humanity long before modern history began." Outside the flagship, the battle intensified across Sol system. Massive hunter warships continued firing into the black ocean surrounding Earth while colossal Veil-born entities retaliated by ripping apart sections of space itself. Entire fleets vanished every second. Mars cracked open beneath gravitational distortions spreading across the system. Saturn's rings ignited like fire across the void. Jupiter's atmosphere twisted into continent-sized storms from the sheer force of collapsing dimensional barriers nearby. Humanity's solar system was dying. And all of it revolved around Elias. The hunter commander aimed its weapon directly at him. "The cycle ends now." But before it could fire, the silver-eyed king raised one hand. The hunter froze instantly. Not physically. Existentially. Its body locked in place as reality around it stopped functioning correctly. The black armor began cracking apart while red symbols across its surface flickered violently. "You still believe you can kill gods," the king said calmly. The hunter forced itself to move despite invisible pressure crushing the corridor around it. "We killed you once." Silver eyes narrowed. "No," the king whispered. "You only delayed us." The corridor exploded again as more hunters breached through surrounding walls. Heavy red weapons opened fire immediately, flooding the chamber with concentrated energy designed specifically to erase Veil-born entities. But the attacks curved around Elias harmlessly. The hunters stopped firing instantly, because the silver energy spreading beneath Elias's skin was absorbing the blasts. Feeding on them. Fear spread visibly through the soldiers. The lead hunter spoke quietly into its comm systems. "Priority extinction event confirmed." Across Sol system, every hunter fleet abruptly changed formation. Not toward the Veil-born. Toward Earth. The silver-eyed king realized it immediately. They intend planetary cleansing. Elias felt cold terror stab through him. "No." Massive black warships began repositioning around Earth's orbit. Ancient weapons powered up across their hulls, each one capable of sterilizing entire worlds. Billions of humans looked up at the sky while evacuation sirens screamed across every continent. The hunters were preparing to erase Earth completely. The king turned sharply toward Elias. "You must remember fully. I don't want this. You no longer have a choice." Another violent pulse exploded through Elias's mind. More memories surfaced. He remembered the final hours before humanity's fall. The hunters breached the Veil Citadel while reality collapsed around the Empire. Entire dimensions burned. The Veil itself began consuming creation after centuries of abuse. And Elias finally understood the horrifying truth. Neither side won the war. The Veil won. Humanity's endless manipulation of it had awakened something sleeping beyond reality itself. Something even the Veil-born feared. Elias saw it now in memory. A presence moving beneath existence. Watching. Waiting. Hungry. The same thing hidden behind the black ocean surrounding Earth. The same thing the silver-eyed beings were desperately trying to contain. The king looked directly into Elias's eyes. We did not return to conquer the galaxy. For the first time, genuine fear crossed the ancient being's face. We returned because it followed us. Silence swallowed the corridor. Even the hunters froze. Then space itself screamed. Every living being across Sol system heard it. A sound so massive and ancient that human minds struggled to survive hearing it at all. Stars dimmed instantly. The black ocean around Earth began moving violently outward. Massive veil-born entities turned toward deep space in visible terror. Something was coming through the veil. And this time, both sides were afraid. The scream from beyond reality did not fade. It grew louder. Across Earth, billions collapsed to their knees as the sound tore through mines, oceans, and even the planet itself. Windows shattered across entire continents. Satellites fell burning from orbit. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, tectonic plates shifted violently as though the world was trying to escape something approaching from outside existence. Every star in Sol system dimmed. Not naturally. Something vast was blocking them. The hunter fleets stopped firing completely. The veil-born entities retreated deeper into the black ocean surrounding Earth like frightened animals, sensing a greater predator nearby. Even the silver-eyed king stood motionless now, staring toward the growing fracture beyond Pluto where reality itself continued splitting apart. And from inside the wound, something moved. At first Elias could not understand what he was seeing. The shape was too large. Too wrong. Entire sections of space bent unnaturally around it as though the universe could not properly contain its existence. Darkness spilled from the fracture endlessly while massive tendrils of silver-black matter stretched across millions of kilometers. Then the eyes opened. Thousands. Millions. Each one larger than planets. Watching the galaxy. Watching Earth. Human minds across Sol system began breaking instantly. Military officers shot themselves on live broadcasts. Entire crowds descended into madness screaming about shadows moving beneath reality. Even advanced AI systems across surviving fleets abruptly erased themselves rather than continue observing the entity. The hunters reacted first. Every black warship in the system activated ancient red symbols simultaneously. Massive energy barriers formed around their fleets while weapons larger than moons charged toward the growing horror beyond the fracture. The lead hunter commander turned toward Elias. This is your empire's final consequence. Then the hunters unleashed everything. Beams brighter than suns ripped across the void toward the creature emerging from the veil. Entire sections of space vaporized beneath the assault. Reality itself cracked apart around the impact zones. But the entity did not slow down. The attacks disappeared into its body like stones falling into an ocean. The thing continued emerging. Slowly. Endlessly. The silver-eyed king whispered something Elias barely heard. The Devourer. Another memory exploded inside Elias's mind. He remembered now. Not even the Veil-born created the veil. They merely discovered it. And buried deep within that endless dimension slept something ancient beyond comprehension. Humanity's experiments woke it slowly over millions of years until eventually the creature began feeding on entire realities through the cracks the Empire created. That was why the hunters rebelled. That was why the ancient war began. Humanity was never fighting for power. They were trying to stop extinction. But they failed. Elias staggered through the collapsing corridor as more memories surfaced. The Veil-born escaped beyond reality not to survive the hunters, but to imprison the Devourer away from the galaxy. And now Horizon Gate had broken the prison. The silver-eyed king looked toward Earth below them. If it fully enters our universe, he said quietly, everything ends. The hunter commander stepped beside him unexpectedly. For the first time in millions of years, both ancient enemies stood together, united by fear. Outside, the Devourer moved closer. Entire stars vanished behind its impossible form. The black ocean surrounding Earth began collapsing inward violently as the veil-born entities sacrificed themselves one by one to slow the creature's emergence. Colossal silver beings slammed directly into the fracture, tearing themselves apart while sealing portions of the dimensional wound temporarily. But it wasn't enough. The crack kept growing. The devourer kept coming. Earth's governments finally lost all control. Cities erupted into chaos worldwide. Religious cults worshipped the entity openly in the streets while military forces abandoned positions to protect families. Humanity watched the sky splitting above them as something older than creation itself descended toward their world. And through all of it, Elias felt the throne calling to him. Not physically. Instinctively. Deep within the black ocean surrounding Earth, hidden beyond ordinary space, the remains of the First Empire still existed. Waiting for its king. The silver-eyed ruler stepped closer. "You sealed away your power because you feared what humanity had become," he said softly. "But without you, we cannot stop this." Elias stared toward Earth. Toward billions of innocent humans who had no idea their species once ruled galaxies as monsters. "I can't become that thing again." "You already are." The hunter commander suddenly removed its helmet. Elias froze. The face beneath was human. Scarred. Ancient. Exhausted beyond words. "We hated you," the hunter admitted quietly. "For millions of years we hunted your empire across dying realities." His eyes darkened. "But the truth is we failed too." The devourer's scream shook the solar system again. Entire moons cracked apart. The hunter continued staring at Elias. Only the Veil King ever wounded it. Silence. The silver-eyed ruler slowly extended one glowing hand. "Return to the throne." Elias looked between both ancient enemies. Then toward Earth. Humanity's homeworld glowed beneath the collapsing heavens like a fragile candle before an incoming storm. Billions of lives. Billions of futures. All hanging on the decision of one man who barely understood what he truly was anymore. Another scream erupted from the fracture. Closer this time. The devourer was entering reality fully. And Elias finally understood something terrifying. Humanity's greatest strength was never power. It was sacrifice. Slowly, painfully, he stepped toward the black ocean. The darkness opened before him instantly. The throne was waiting. The throne stood at the center of a dead universe. Elias walked through endless darkness while broken stars drifted around him like ashes after a forgotten fire. Massive ruins floated silently across the void, fragments of the First Empire abandoned millions of years ago when humanity tore reality apart through its own ambition. And at the center of it all stood the throne itself. Black metal. Silver fired at a structure so enormous it looked carved from the skeleton of a collapsed galaxy. The moment Elias stepped near it, the entire dead universe awakened. Lights ignited across impossible cities stretching beyond the horizon. Ancient warships larger than planets stirred from dormancy. Millions of silver eyes opened within the darkness surrounding him. Waiting. Remembering. The last Veil King had returned. Elias stared at the throne while memories crashed through him completely now. Not fragments. Not visions. Everything. He remembered being worshipped. He remembered destroying civilizations that resisted humanity's rule. He remembered opening the veil despite warnings from entire galaxies. And most painfully, he remembered regretting it. The throne was never built for conquest. It was built to contain the devourer after humanity accidentally awakened it. The First Empire sacrificed itself, imprisoning the creature beyond reality while the surviving hunters sealed both the Veilborn and the monster away forever. Until modern humanity reopened the gate. Elias closed his eyes. Earth appeared in his mind instantly. Children crying inside shelters. Families holding each other beneath darkening skies. Human soldiers preparing hopeless defenses against a god beyond existence. They knew nothing about the sins of the First Empire. They were innocent. And innocence was something ancient humanity lost long ago. Slowly, Elias sat upon the throne. The universe screamed. Silver fire erupted across the dead empire instantly. Ancient fleets awakened throughout the void while massive dimensional engines buried for millions of years roared back to life. Reality itself trembled as forgotten weapons aligned toward Sol System once more. Far away, beyond the dimensional fracture, the Devourers stopped moving. For the first time, it felt fear. Back in Sol System, both the Hunters and the remaining Veilborn turned toward the black ocean surrounding Earth as it suddenly exploded outward with impossible force. Entire planets shook while silver storms consumed space itself. Then the fleets arrived. Thousands upon thousands of ancient human warships emerged from the darkness surrounding Earth. Massive silver constructs larger than moons surrounded the planet while colossal dimensional engines unfolded around Sol like metallic gods awakening from extinction. Humanity stared upward in absolute silence. The First Empire had returned. At the center of the fleet, Elias appeared. No longer fully human. Silver light burned beneath his skin while darkness moved around him like living wings. His eyes now carried entire galaxies within them. Yet despite the transformation, he still remembered Earth. The Devourer roared across reality itself as it forced more of its impossible body through the fracture. Entire sections of space collapsed around it while stars vanished into the creature's endless darkness. The Hunters prepared for a final assault. The Veilborn gathered beside them. Ancient enemies united one last time beneath humanity's forgotten king. Elias looked toward the monster beyond the veil, and finally understood why humanity had once been feared above all civilizations. Because humans were willing to become monsters to protect what they loved. The throne connected fully with him. Power flooded through every atom of his existence. Time slowed. Space bent. Entire dimensions unfolded before his thoughts like pages inside a book. The Devourer lunged toward Sol. Elias moved first. He raised one hand, and the galaxy obeyed. Massive silver chains erupted across space itself, wrapping around the creature as ancient dimensional engines activated throughout the Empire fleet. Entire stars were pulled from orbit to power containment fields stronger than physics itself. The Devourer screamed. Reality shattered around it. But Elias held firm. Every surviving Veilborn poured their existence into the prison. Hunter fleets sacrificed themselves one by one, stabilizing collapsing dimensional barriers while Sol System burned beneath the strain of forces beyond mortal comprehension. Earth's oceans rose into the sky. Mountains split apart. The moon cracked. Still Elias held the line. Blood streamed from his eyes as the throne began consuming him completely. He could feel his humanity slipping away beneath the weight of infinite power. The Devourer fought harder. The prison weakened. And Elias realized the terrible truth. The creature could never truly be destroyed. Only imprisoned. The silver-eyed king appeared beside the throne one final time. You know what must happen. Elias nodded slowly. The prison required a lock. A living consciousness powerful enough to remain inside the veil forever, holding the Devourer back. Someone had to stay behind. Earth appeared again inside Elias's thoughts. Blue skies. Human laughter. A species reborn without the sins of its ancestors. He smiled sadly. Then made his choice. Across every screen on Earth, humanity saw Elias one final time. Not as a king. Not as a god. As a man. If humanity deserves anything, he said softly, it deserves a future free from our mistakes. The throne ignited completely. The black ocean surrounding Sol collapsed inward. And Elias dragged the Devourer back into the veil with him. The dimensional fracture sealed instantly. Silence returned to the galaxy. The ancient fleets vanished. The remaining Veilborn disappeared into darkness forever. The Hunters retreated without another word. And Earth survived. Years later, humanity rebuilt beneath quiet stars, never fully understanding the truth hidden inside their forgotten history. Most records of the war were lost. Governments buried what remained. Civilizations moved on. But sometimes, late at night, deep space travelers reported strange things near the edge of dead galaxies. A silver light watching from the darkness. Ancient warships drifting silently between stars. and a lone voice whispering through the void whenever humanity stood on the edge of destruction again. We remember Earth,